Hell yeah. Hello.
Hello again. So we were just talking about the name Mystery School Dropouts. We just had a little conversation for about 20 minutes or so, 10 minutes, whatever it was, just getting to know each other a little bit better. And then I brought the name up because we had kind of landed on the idea that Western science has gotten to the bottom of the Hermetic secret, which is that we're all the same thing, because that grass over there is just me having, it's my DNA expressed differently, having a different experience, which is the same as me talking to you. It's the same DNA expressed differently, having a different experience. So in some sense, it's a higher level experience that's taking in more patterns and expressing more patterns, but it's not fundamentally different.
Yeah.
So so now the conversation can begin.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Now that's a good first step. um, I mean, and the conversation can go in any way now. So
Yeah. What do you want to ask?
I mean, I wanted to ask, I was enjoying getting personal because I've really enjoyed getting the esoteric path out of someone, like your esoteric path that comes out of
Yes.
your story. That doesn't come out of the things you know. I'm
Right.
also very interested in the things you know. And my challenge is, I guess, my in general life challenge right now is integration. I want everything to be integrated. Integration itself as a word seems to be a portal into a totally new dimension, to a totally new place where everything is connected instead of
Yep.
its own singularity, which you were just commenting on at the bottom of the Hermetic code. And
Well,
yeah, so
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, take it from there. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can recount an experience I had on Sunday. No, yesterday. Sorry, Monday. What's today? Wednesday.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Okay. So Tuesday, Monday, day before yesterday. Sorry, Labor Day threw me off. Uh, so on Labor Day, the wife and I went out to, so integration you're talking about. So I've been doing that integration thing. I've had some really, um, what many people would consider rough experiences, couched in a life of privilege, right? Has done, which has been useful in certain ways, but has also made me very sheltered and soft in other ways.
Yep.
And because my certain aspects of myself lacked the hormetic stress in order to grow, they became stunted. And as I grew into adulthood, my body grew into adulthood, but other parts of me remained stunted. And those barriers have been the things that I perceive have been holding me back. And that is generally, I generally come to those conclusions based on the evidence of watching other people who are following a similar path to me, or or engaging in performative escapism in the same way I do, and noticing what the result is and being like, oh no, that's actually counter to what I want. And then I don't know what happens next. This is the strange part that's sort of, I think, at the bottom of all of psychology and all of, I don't know what it's not. I mean, there's something about our consciousness that has an aspect of volitional agency to it, but I'm not sure that that's real or if it's just the appearance thereof from our perspective. It seems like it's not real, because it seems like I can't have a different experience other than the next step from the last thing I experienced. So it seems like I'm totally locked in to right now. no matter what.
Oh, what I'm writing down is lack of free will equals the only next step is the next step.
Yeah, it is, right? But what's interesting about us is as this planet's hyper awareness, we have both a perceived memory of the past and a perceived prediction of the future that we can access.
Mhm.
And it seems that those things we consider to be very real, but I don't know where they reside in any sense besides in our imaginative quality,
Mhm.
whatever that is. And so, and even now, Western science is telling us that memories don't exist the way we think they do, but they are recreated each time we remember them as essentially a predictive model of a set of past occurrences, much like our predictive model of the future occurrences exist.
Same predictive model.
Same, it's a similar predictive model. One informs the other. One's a top-down process and one's a bottom-up process, but they meet and they mesh. So because one is taking an experience from the perceived world and one is taking an experience from the perceived self and pushing in one in the opposite direction, right? In or out. It's breath essentially. It's just respiration, but we do it at each. As far as I can tell, it's not simply a biological process, which is weird to think about.
Metaphysical.
I don't know. I don't know what that word means. I've never know. I never know what that fucking word means because how can something be metaphysical? How is like we have
The
the
sacred
physical,
geometry behind it, perhaps.
right? But I suppose I'm in this. I suppose the reason why it's never made sense to me is is okay. This is good. Oh, okay. Just a moment.
Take your time.
It. Uh, this is the autism spectrum disorder asserting itself because I am encountering combinatorial explosion as such. And one of the things I notice is tension in my body as my senses move out. It's strange when that happens in conversation. I never know how the other person is going to react. And so I often have fear that people I will have fear. But I assure you nothing's wrong and I'm not in any pain. What's happening is, I believe, the amount of information I'm attempting to handle and process into words is a lot. And it's overwhelming to hold a lot of it. And so I close my eyes so I don't have to take in additional visual stimulus.
Yeah. I love data crunching, so this is very enjoyable for me because I am data crunching with you.
Thank
right
you.
now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm glad that the space between us has not been disturbed.
No, not at all. It's been encouraged.
So my neck just popped.
Feels good, man.
Yeah. So that's the so somehow that's that was the tension it was looking for. And somehow the consciousness transfers into the body more wholly to look for it. And there's a weird, I don't know how to describe what just happened. Like, I don't know what it is. But I know what often kicks me there is attempting to describe what happens when I start sensing everything as everything. And I don't know how to put it differently than that. Like when we start to talk about the things underneath reality, I have had experiences of that I can hold, but they're so difficult to categorize and process into a lower dimensional form that I can translate to another
Mhm,
node.
mhm. Do you
And I
have,
wish to deeply
yes.
because it's so fucking cool.
Do you ever channel entities, or do you consider yourself to be a channel of any kind?
No, I mean, I understand why someone might think that. I think that people like me are somewhat rare, but not that uncommon in the grander scheme of things.
That's well said.
And we, you don't enjoy barriers between others. And when other people put them up, we don't understand why.
Mm.
And it makes us sad because we intuit that we're not different. And you're saying that we are. And it's a lie. Why would you want to live like that? It doesn't make any sense.
Unless you just want to get to know it all.
Yes. uh,
I guess I ask about channeling only because I felt I've lost the little crystallization point of it, but I
mhm.
felt as though you might be able to extrapolate streams of information with that mindset to externalize the information coming in just enough to,
It's something like that.
yeah.
It's I think it participates in several layers of knowledge at once, which is why it's so difficult to hold, because to do it correctly, one must let go in a sense.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
surrender.
and yes, the surrendering aspect, but if one does not have the scaffolding of the knowledge, then the surrender can fail somehow if it's not embodied properly, because at times when you let go, you will not have all the facts and you will not have the proper relationship and you will not know when to act, or you will not know the next step, or you will not know the whole story. And
Right.
so if you don't possess those knowledges, you're going in a little bit blind. That's not to say you're going to have a bad time, but you're going in a little bit blind.
Mm.
And that's how we all are. And to recognize that and forgive others and ourselves seems to be the only path forward to any reconciliation at all. So, yeah.
Reconciliation with what or who?
Oh, the perceived other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
The big
we
O.
attempt to reconcile each other to each other. But there's nothing really to do. That's the thing. We attempt to grasp at a thing that's not even, the barrier's not even there. We don't see it.
This reminds me of a bit of an anecdote. I hope I'm able to say it within a nice little package. Someone I used to see self-identified as a cat. And
Me too.
yeah, no kidding.
My wife calls me a kitty all the time. I do little,
Well,
I do little scaredy cat postures, like when like stuff happens in the room. I just, it's, I'm like a kitty. Yeah, go ahead.
um, yeah, he self-identified as a cat at a soul level. And the meaning of life was pouncing, the need to pounce. That was the meaning of life. So my question to him was, does like it requires an external, it requires an else. So my question to him was, does that else need to have its own sentience to have any fun?
Mm.
And without hesitation, the answer was fuck yes. It needs to be its own thing. It needs to forget that we are the same source. It needs to, or else it's no fun. There's no more meaning anymore. um so that was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, I can share that perspective. I understand that because there is a great deal of fun in poking the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's something that I do to myself even.
Yeah.
Um, I do it to my wife, much to her chagrin sometimes. Um, we'll poke each other's shadows and
Yeah.
enjoy it. And sometimes that can I mean, there's aftercare, obviously. We don't, we love each other a lot. And so there's when boundaries are asserted, they're respected, and uh behaviors are modified, and
That's good.
things, we can talk, which is really good. She often says there's no fuck you between us, which is really nice. It allows us that grace of saying, I'm frustrated,
Yeah.
but
Right.
not fuck you.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you're doing this to me, not I'm having a tough time. And that shift in perspective was really valuable to our relationship. I mean, as I'm sure, but that's the thing. It's like, it's us against the thing, not us against each other.
Yes, having a common enemy is the best we can achieve.
Right,
Almost, right?
right. But it's not even an enemy. It's just like there's a challenge that exists,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenge could be. I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be. This environment is difficult for me, right? It
Yeah.
could be I'm having feelings of a trauma that I experienced. That could be the challenge. It could be that there is an actual enemy, and that's the challenge. Yeah, it could be that there's, like, somebody trying to take advantage of both of us, like scam us or something like that. And maybe I'm the target or you're the target, and maybe one of us got exploited, but now this is an us against them thing, not me saying, why are you so stupid thing. um so it to get to there, it's trying to conceptualize the thing in between you as a thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as the relationship as its own entity between, what we perceive as individuals, but I think that that construction is basically fractal all the way down and all the way up. So I think that we have a mind and a body and a relational self inside us. And that third thing can be healthy or not healthy on its own. You know, the mind can be healthy and not healthy on its own. The body can be healthy or not healthy on its own. And I think the relationship and the way you relate to things, you know, are functionally the same thing, and that can be healthy or not healthy. And I think a lot of people and especially because Western science and Descartes has fractured us into this moronic mind body split. We think the two are somehow on different planes of existence, which is patently absurd.
And that we'd be going backwards to unite them again.
Right. You know, I mean, you can conceptualize it that way and it takes you so far, but like then you hit a brick wall because you don't conceptualize a third thing that has to be there to relate the two.
Yes.
Right. And there's a relationship that is equal to but participates in both other things, right? So the relationship is like is like the abstract child of the two entities.
I was gonna say the creative child, the divine child.
Yeah, right. Right. In alchemy, that's how it's conceptualized, you know, and that seems to be the case inside us. It seems to be the case in between us, and it seems to be the case when a whole bunch of us get together, like that we all have, like there's a corporation of a bunch of people that has its own mind, that has its own psyche, that has its own set of symbols and sigils and signs that relates to its internal workings and external workings in a certain way. And typically when you get a self that is used to externalizing its costs, it's doing that all over the place. It's usually doing that internally to its own mind, its own body, its own relational capacity, its relationship with others. And it externalizes those costs because it perceives that it can gain. And this is actually the problem that I think hyper awareness is designed to solve. That there's no such thing as gain. It does not exist in any real sense.
As what? Sorry?
It doesn't exist in any real
as
sense.
What? As what?
Gain doesn't exist. Gain, like there's nothing to gain or lose.
Right. Yeah, right.
There's just local stuff.
Yeah.
But to think that we're in any real control over the fluctuations, I mean, the sun could fart and wipe us all out. Like there's to have the illusion that like we're somehow making moves. I don't know. It seems easy to see through at times.
Yeah, for sure. From certain perspectives, there are gaping holes.
Yeah.
And from other perspectives, it's a bit more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that complexity exists in those predictive models. You know, I think a lot of that complexity is offset, both probably. To those models, because we have to live in order to be material. Like we have to participate in a trillion involuntary organic processes in order to keep incorporating material patterns.
Yeah, I
So
often think,
there's
sorry.
Oh no, I was just, go ahead.
If you have your thoughts still, I am interested. I wasn't thinking. I was getting on a train of thought of thinking how like the detachment of the material world from our perspective as a species, and the crux of that experience probably being with Cartesian philosophy being introduced into the sciences. Just thinking to myself at a really extreme kind of level and thinking, like largely the universe is disembodied material, therefore in the metaphysical realm, like not the majority of the information we know to exist in the universe isn't material, even though our immediate world is completely material. It just makes me kind of hyper project into being a greater entity than myself, and thinking that I act like, feeling like that interact oh my gosh, integration that I'm trying to perceive in my daily reality. Like, what if this disembodied, no, not disembodied material realm, I'm losing my own grasp on that, because there's a disembodied
You're doing the thing, by the
astral
way.
realm. Yeah.
No, you're doing it because what you're attempting to do, right, is you're attempting to use language to take two concepts that are totally beyond language and fuse them into a thing that's even more beyond language, right? So of course you're being like, that's
Yeah.
the same thing that happens to me. That's the same. You're doing this. It's happening to me. I'm practiced at pushing through it because I can practice holding the information because I can my my what however my wiring is, it can do stuff like that. But I don't think it's that different from yours. Like I don't think I'm that special. I'm just practiced in a different mode of adaptive capacity.
I think you're good at also containing knowledge.
Yeah,
I
probably.
forget the knowledge part of it fast, even
No.
though it's there. And I'm more intuitive speaking because of it, I think. I come
My
across
wife
as
thinks
more
she has the same problem. She does not. You
interesting.
don't either.
Interesting.
You don't either. It's just the way you map information is probably relational,
Right.
not factual.
Okay.
So you need the way you map things is you're mapping connective tissue, not the nodes, right? So you're practiced at one thing, which is mapping the connective tissue. But you can use the connective tissue mentally to figure out without having to remember what the nodes are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So probably when you do, like when you study for a test or something like that, your optimal style, if you found it, was probably something like figuring out how all of the puzzle fits together and then sort of getting the relational bits correct. And then that would enable you to remember the facts. Like the relations were, am I off
I've
or am I?
never studied for a test, so I'm
Oh,
actually
great.
thinking,
So
I'm
no.
like, how would I do that?
That's fucking great. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's like, okay, that's so funny. So, because like, I was just like, oh, here's a reference point I can assume exists. Nope. Nope. Bang goes
No,
that
I'm a
theory.
dropout,
Awesome.
remember?
That's well fucking good for you. Damn. That's an enviable experience, by the way.
but
That's
but you are reminding me as to how I got away with it for so long, because I
Mhm.
went to class. I did go to class.
Right.
I didn't do my homework. I didn't give a fuck about the tests, but I went
Mhm.
to class. So I got the root. I got that
Right.
relational.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Great.
does make
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think those are the main two learning styles that conflict with each other.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think those are the
They're
things
not
like
integrated.
they're not integrated, right? We
Yeah.
don't know how to integrate them at the level where we can teach kids who need one way and need the other at the same time.
Mhm.
Or one, somebody's much more focused on one and somebody's much, I mean, I'm sure it's a spectrum, right? Where people fall on, like they're
Yeah.
good at doing facts, they're good at doing relations. Some people like in this,
Yeah. And
maybe a
like
small
every
minority.
spectrum, most of us actually reside in the gray zone that aren't
Right,
defined by.
right, exactly. So but it's useful to know because it means one, the anxiety you feel about being stupid isn't real because you're not. It's just that the way you process and map things is different from the way mainstream Western culture wants you to do it.
Mhm.
So it's not that you're stupid, it's just you're a fish in a tree, you know.
I write about that all the time.
I'm
I am a
sure,
fish
right?
that learned to climb the tree, or at least
Right. There you go. So the same thing. So like, there's segments of kids like that everywhere, right? So where they're mismatched to their whatever it is, because I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's education styles that emphasize the relational stuff, and the kids that are really good at facts struggle. I don't know if I don't know if that's the case. I'm just assuming that probably exists somewhere. But who knows?
When I ask myself what it looks like integrated, I keep on seeing a spider's web. So like the
Mhm.
route and then the nodes and how it
Yeah,
connects.
yeah,
Though there's no other way of getting all of that information, getting that whole shape or form without doing the whole route and getting all the nodes.
right.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? And so, and then the thing to realize also is we can't, like, it's not, that's an actual impossible task, like, because we're dealing with at all times abstractions of
yeah.
things in those predictive models. So anytime we're doing the relational factual dance, where we're playing with stuff that isn't the now. And
Yeah, we're allowing for more potential.
right,
We're
right,
opening
hopefully.
up the yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or yeah, more potential in one regard or another, either avoiding positive, or I mean avoiding negative, or influencing positive, like bringing about positive, like one way or the other. um yeah, that's interesting. I lost my train of thought.
Me too.
What time is it? 11:51.
uh
Okay.
yep. Yeah, you got a different time.
Yep.
Um, well, this is also reminding me of a bit of a thought I've been working with recently of you said earlier like wrong time place shouldn't be here. You're talking about yourself.
Hmm.
But that kind of got me into this, like you could build rooms in your mind, right? So I'm building a new room. And in this room, space and time are new to me. I don't know what I already know about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was presented with these mystical beasts, so to speak, recently in this room. And I began to recognize them as the same mythical beasts I know here in this realm,
Mm-hmm.
even this realm of the imagination that we share as a collective. Uh, but I started to see like these horrendic horror beasts that we would have in our collective. So like the Cthulhu's or the dragons, the
Mm-hmm.
whatever, as like evolution of self.
Mm.
So as I evolve, I have to learn to crawl before I learn to walk. And
Right,
as I go through time, I look like a worm because of that. And
right,
then as I become more complex, the creature starts to do crazy things and transform, like new limbs, wings, whatever.
right.
And through time, that creature has a tail now, which was its crawling phase.
Mm-hmm.
It's just in the evolutionary phase, it's just the tail,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Uh, so you get a lot of these dragon type of creatures in a space where time space is actually one thing, because we are in a polarized perspective of it.
Yeah.
We are not integrated. We are polarized material. We have a comprehension of our own other.
We, I, the type of mysticism I practice in that school, there's no distinction between matter and spirit. So those things are simply in the category of non-existent.
Mm,
It's not that there's a fundamental difference, because there's not really at the level of wholeness a fundamental difference between existence and non-existence either. They both participate in the same wholeness by necessity. It's just one is the appearance, and appearance and the barriers that we experience are the only things that keep us from experiencing infinity.
mm.
at all times. The more some of us push through that, the more infinity we experience. And that gets weird in 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 the sense where have you ever had the experience of a symbol? I mean, not thought about it, but experienced everything the symbol meant at the same time?
I want to say yes, but no symbol that I carry here on Earth. Yes.
Okay. So, can you describe what that was like for you?
It was descending into the 1,000 words that makes up a picture.
Was it a
Specifically,
particular picture?
uh, I'm reds, purples, blues.
Okay. That makes sense. Hmm. Descending. Did you melt into it?
Yeah, specifically a dissension, like specifically I had to shed perception
Hmm. Yeah,
of reality first.
right. That's the appearance field.
Hmm.
The appearance field being annihilated, not annihilated, but so during the mystical process, you perform a bunch of steps as a simultaneous gesture that result in the meaning of reality being transfigured.
Hmm.
What happens still happens. What appears still appears, but the meaning is radically altered. And this enables a kind of freedom that I believe many people look for and can't find because they are looking in a place to complete something. They are looking for something to fill a hole or a perceived lack.
Hmm.
But again, because there is no gain, there is no lack. It is the perception thereof that,
Yeah, there is transmutation.
yes, yes, constantly, the constant becoming and dying. But the the thing that causes the anxiety and the fear is the reification of a perceived lack into the mind. This is why so many traditions talk about the practice of abundance leading to it is the de-reifying of perceived lack.
Hmm.
It is not that you have more stuff. It is that the things you possess are sufficient for you in the moment. And should you need more, more exists. But perhaps not locally. Perhaps your lack is vital.
Hmm. Perhaps for the journey. It brings to mind how this is
That's still a perception. That's the thing.
Hmm.
Death is still a perception
Yes, yeah.
because it's the transition from existence to non-existence. And that those two things already participate in the same wholeness. So it's merely the transition that we're afraid of.
Change, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. We associate change with loss, but as
Yes.
you mentioned, there is no
Or
loss
gain.
or gain. Yeah. Well, gain is still a loss of something. That's our transmutation. We can
Yes.
receive a gain through a perceived loss,
Yeah.
but at a super neutral perspective, that is simply transmutation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's just, it's not just anything. One of the things it is the foliation pattern of reality just being carried out by the process.
By foliation, do you mean like the fractal pattern? I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
that word.
yeah, more or less. I think that's one way to perceive it. It seems that the appearance field that we register as real is generated at base by some probably very simple math. Otherwise, we couldn't do it very well. Like it's us doing it, right? It's us. We are not different from the appearance field. We are not different from the universe. We already know that.
Right.
So we are part of the appearance field. The
We are
appearance field.
participants.
We're
Yeah.
participants. Yes. Yeah. Whether we like it or not, basically, it has no bearing on how we feel about it. So, at base, we can only either accept or not accept, I think.
Right. It's neutral to us.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's still the appearance field. It's still all of this is still, I still have the appearance of muscles and stuff like that are moving around. It's not different from the wall and the cup and the bag of little vegan puff chips that are over there. But the vegan. Oh, these are okay. Doesn't that don't really concern me that much.
How many fields are there? An appearance field, a sensation field, I imagine.
I mean, in the tradition I attempt to follow, there's only the one appearance field. It's all of those sensations participate through the senses in our. It's perception as such, but the perceiver is the awareness. What is what the awareness is not different from what is being made aware, what the awareness is making the perceiver aware of. Like it's happening at the same time. There's a weird, well, it's not weird, it's probably due to instantiated biological lag that we don't get it right away. Like there's signal loss basically at each fractally, really. I mean, how loud something is attenuated by how far away it is. The sensation in heat is attenuated by how far away it is. There's signal loss, but the most direct conduit is probably through the eyes for people that can see, because all those photons go in and they're slowed down by the aqueous solution and then bounced around a little bit and translated into electrical impulses. And though each one of those things represents a degradation of that energy to a lower state. So, but that energy doesn't go anywhere. So it seems that participating in consciousness is similar in math to being a black hole.
I think that's awesome. I was following that train of thought.
Yeah.
In fact, as you were speaking, I was visualizing the fractal pattern and I guess, nodes at every point as like a tiny little black hole.
Yeah, it seems like that's what happened. That's what's happening. And we get, much like a black hole that we just discovered, this stream of information ejecting out the center. We have this stream of patterns, right, that are synthesized from everything we take in and ejected out. And that, I think, is what we experience, that as our thought stream. And we can access that or not access that in a moment. But that appears to be what we get. And that's it.
I would love to unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, that's well, I mean, the
How
last
it spit back out the information.
it looks like it's a toroid.
What's
So
not
it
a
takes
toroid?
what's
Honestly,
not a toroid, right?
yeah.
At bottom. At this Jesus fuck it. I think it's just toroids all the way down.
Yeah,
They almost got it right. It's
that's the
turtle, not
fractal.
toroids, not turtles all the way down.
The telephone, right? Over
Telephone,
history.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like it flows along these vectors of information, absorbing information and ejecting information synthesized into a lower dimensional form. So for the purpose, I mean, as far as I can tell, and this is conjecture and hypothesis, I have no backing for this, but as far as I can tell, it's in order to make the universe more ordered and beautiful. Ordered in the sense of reducing local chaos.
So it is in astrology. That is how it gets to us.
I guess there's still star photons, right? I mean,
Well,
listen,
solar light. Yeah.
the thing is, none of it's not connected. That's the thing. Like anything we reject as being not connected is us rejecting a piece of us. Unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't need the answer to that to be astrology. I just think it's rather poetic
It's
with
yeah.
that framework.
Yeah. I mean, we're stardust, right? And so we're not different from it. It's just we're slower.
We're super fast
Compared to the star.
compared
I mean,
to
our energy resonance is slower is what I'm talking about. Our vibration is slower. Or do you think it's faster?
I was thinking just, I
It's-
guess, our experience in time, like really basic.
Maybe it's both. I mean, it's relativistic, right? I mean, we're all still in the envelope of the Big Bang, as far as anybody can tell, and the Big Bang is still happening right now. As far as I mean, it's just still happening. Like this is it.
It's banging itself out as we speak.
Banging it out. Just all of us just banging it out. So let's just bang it out. This is
Also
not a come on, by
fractals.
the way. But no, it's weird to think about in some sense because it's so detached from the appearance of what's going on and all of these perceived lacks that it's almost I think we try to reject it as too abstract to be a functional part of our lived experience.
Well, I think that's silly, but I can see how, the industrial / scientific / de-religiousness-sizing of everything, because
Yeah.
like our safety net now is no, I don't believe that. That's a scam.
Right.
That's a coping mechanism. That's a safety net. The only way to gather information is to believe something. You want to
Yep.
extrapolate information, believe it, just give your belief system an expiry date and you're
Right.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be attached to it. That's the thing. Like people get attached to their ideas and like they think they are their ideas. In some sense they are, but like you can let go any idea you want. I'm just moving away from a dude doing leaf blowing.
Yeah, I mean, like, let me know what your. I don't need to take you away from your day at all.
I'm not being taken away from my day. This is my day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the math.
Toroids all the way down.
The toroids all the way down. Yeah. Yeah. And that seems to be borne out by the Wolfram physics stuff. His project's really interesting. I mean I'm not really good at understanding what's going on, but the more I read into it and the more I try and understand it, like the more it's explained to me by people who are better at that stuff, the more it seems to be, and it's just so that we're this information mesh stacked on top of itself that creates these whirls of patterns in this sort of cellular automata thing that's just clicking forward. But even the clicking forward, I think, is probably an illusion. It's still just one, like if you were to look at it, right, from big zoomed out lens, you would see just one line of black and white dots, right? But if you looked at it in time, you would see all kinds of patterns in the black and white dots in the cellular automata, like these things that just very simple rules. Anybody can Google it. Very simple rules. You plug in some very simple rules to a binary starting seed, and then you just let it go. And then
The
sometimes
double
it'll
slit
produce.
experiment.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, but it's programmatic. So basically, you're just setting some rules as to when black turns to white and white turns to black.
Okay.
And so, like, let's say if it's a white dot and it's in between two black dots, it's going to turn to black. And so, if that was the only rule that existed, eventually you would get all black dots at some point, unless there was a big boundary of white dots where you had just one or more white dots together, and then those would never turn black. So you would get this. It would eventually sort into a stable state, right? For each rule you add more chaos to the system. So if you could instantiate the rule with on that previous thing, if you have two white dots together, one flips to black. So now you're selecting more for black. So you're basically setting the rules that guide the evolution of the pattern through each click, right? And that's not different than the environment setting the rules that guides the evolution of DNA through each click. It's the same. It's just greatly complexified because there's so many additional rules, and the rules themselves are computationally intractable. So you can't even get a sense of the rules. And not only can you not get a sense of the rules, you can't there. It's impossible to inspect the rules that set the rules from within the environment that from within the field of appearance that the rules are setting. So if you're inside the cellular automata, you can get a sense for what the rules are by inspecting the patterns, but there's no way to get a sense of the rules that set the rules from inside it. So meaning this is, I mean, this is something he got to on stream with a couple of physicists and a mathematician, and I'm screaming at the screen going, you just demonstrated there's no objectivity. Like everything's a perception.
Wasn't that,
Just,
it doesn't,
because it means that there's no inspectable arbiter. There's no inspectable thing that we can all point to and go, this is the thing that set up the thing.
I mean, does academic philosophy still give science objectivity?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure certain people do and certain people don't. But I mean, it's getting increasingly like the noose is tightening around the concept.
Right.
Like
yeah.
pretty radically, I think. And I mean, like quantum physics is starting to, and the thing is the Wolfram stuff is undergirding. So he can derive quantum physics and relativity from the same substrate,
Yeah.
meaning that though he can quantize gravity, meaning, okay, so now that's, if all that stuff works and it holds, then we have a unified theory of quantum physics and relativity, which is what we've been after. In which case, great. Maybe, I don't know if we can do anything with it. Quantum computing seems to be operating on certain principles that we're manipulating. So there must be a relational gateway between relativistic creatures like us, relativistic scale, because we perceive time at a relative scale and that level. So there has to be they have to be connected somehow.
Yeah.
So the math of that is just there to be discovered in some sense. So I think it seems to me like they're zeroing in on it, even if they don't have it yet, but it seems like we're getting there.
Is there math for a quantum leap?
Who knows? I mean, probably there well, yes. So yeah, actually, the way he conceptualizes that in his system, is it's a pocket of computational reducibility. So computational reducibility is when you are able to take a huge set of patterns and reduce them to a fairly simple formula, right? So like the gravity, like throwing a ball on Earth, is something that we are so good at modeling that we do it intuitively. Yeah. Right. So that math has been so constricted. It happens with such regularity that pattern recurs with such regularity whenever we instantiate its precursor, that the math of it is really simple at this point. So we can, we can compute reducibly, reliably reduce the pattern to a computation that just carries out, and it happens pretty much the same way every single time. Just like every time you throw a ball with this gravity and with, you know, with this force and this arc, it just, but every single time, every single time, every single time. And so we've functionally created we've reduced the amount of energy it takes to compute that stuff functionally, right?
So it's clearly impossible to have that continue into infinity. Yeah.
Right. So the thing is now we also, because there's pockets of computational reducibility, also must exist pockets of computational irreducibility, which is actually most of it, right? Most of it is computationally irreducible, meaning like there's no way to get at, and this is the case of cellular automata, there's no way to predict any given line past probably, I don't know where they're at. Maybe they're at like a third or fourth order, but I from what I've heard is like even third is really difficult. Once you get past a certain number of cells, it becomes basically impossible. So the thing is like there's pockets of computational reducibility where there is a pattern, and those things exist inside pockets of computation or around in with as like a foliating leaf that kind of never touches the other one. They're just kind of like this thing that's just and but it seems like there's these things that we can't ever predict. There's literally impossible to predict the outcome of these pockets of computational irreducibility.
Awesome.
And we're just stuck. And it seems that I would say most of philosophy, most of our striving, most of our perceived lack comes from these trying to make sense of pockets of computational irreducibility, where there's no predictive model that can work, period, end of story. And so we are grasping at something we can't have because we can't know how it's going to go. So the only solution, therefore, is to become comfortable with the idea of uncertainty. And that's just acceptance of what is and what would be, and then following your own volitional aspiration, because that's also part of it, right? Your volitional aspiration, your like the positive volitional aspiration, I would say, but even the negative is still part of that computational irreducibility working itself out. And if you resist following it, you'll still follow it. You'll just hate yourself.
Okay, so this comments pretty wonderfully on, I mean, I have like a sick obsession with just putting everything together. Not putting everything together, like connecting it, like superimposing things on things I already know just for the hell of it. So the way this, it's also kind of spider webby, but not linear like that. It's like more of like
a tesseract,
textural.
Or a topography.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly. Like the pockets of irreducibility seem to be potentials that I haven't collapsed yet through my free will.
Could be.
But larger structures are things that I can, affect only through changing myself. Therefore, non-effective. Therefore, closer to being truth in our perceived reality. But I'm not sure actually how, like, I enjoyed how, as you were speaking, my brain was going from technical dry stuff to really applicable practical stuff all in like one sentence. So that to me is like what I'm seeking, because that's integration. That's like, okay, like this is how this kind of fits in, but I'm throwing it away every time I'm needing to apply it, because you kind of have to, yeah. So I must admit, I'm in an ocean of thought. I don't have anything crystallized enough to be like, hey, this, like, let's go into that. But I am enjoying what was really salient to me was more rules, more chaos, because that's anti-intuitive to my current perception.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is really cool. And that is something that is anti-intuitive. So I didn't like it's not low-hanging fruit in my mind to pick, you know what I mean? But it's now that I have it in my hand, it's fine. I get it. It makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess like, because I've been following crypto a little bit. Well, not like recently, like since for years now. But now that like all these little coins are getting out, it was interesting to see how like a lot of them are copy and paste of a coin that's been fairly successful with like little tweaks or little marketing tweaks or mechanical tweaks or whatever. And I kind of start to think of nature like that, like Darwin's evolutionary like scheme is easily just like whatever is the OG programmer of our reality, or whoever's programming our reality, us now from the future for the past, who knows?
Right now.
Right now, yeah. You actually, we do know it's right now. Yeah.
We're programming it right now from all the computational reducibility and the computational reducibility. All of our predictive models are made out of both those things. And it's
okay, yeah. So yeah, like Stephen Hawking's life work was essentially saying this, that it's only the now, and like all projections of the future and past are just like essentially cones of reality that exist outside of us. Okay, so now I have 3 thoughts that I know I haven't concluded in this conversation swarming in my head. But I guess like, so this can wrap up. I can sense the integration of all these things. Just going back to the evolution thing for a second, and kind of also, I'm only assuming you're touching on like click by click play for like your own personal project.
Oh yeah, that's part of it too. Yeah, sure.
So more rules, more chaos. There's no going back on the level of complexity that we're playing with.
Yeah.
We have to evolve. We have to kind of, it's easy at least to copy and paste with a couple of tweaks just to stay in the game. Like that's easy. That makes it seem like there is a lot of control for whoever or whatever is doing the programming. I'm still leaving it as a big old question mark, because yes, it's my, I was going to say it's the sovereignty of my consciousness, or my sovereignty of consciousness. It has nothing to do with that. That's part of the evolution. This is an acquired taste.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Once you go like, oh, I'm part of the pattern. Oh, my consciousness is part of the pattern, meaning oh shit, and then you just go like, and then, and yeah, and it's tricky, because then you're like, okay, so whatever I do next is a thing that happens next. I hope it's good.
That part doesn't change.
Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, acid plus quantum physics equals crass saying every day, God doesn't want my certainty. Like I went through so many existential crises over knowing that my certainty was meaningless to the universe, because all I wanted was to become a manifester. And like now we're getting into magic and like the mechanics of magic. And I know for a fact we're not going to have enough time to even start to unpack that. So we'll just kindly skim over it for now.
I think we already did. That's the thing. See, I don't think it's different.
I guess I would
Here's the integration.
Yeah, no, but if that's just it, if we're integrated, there's no conversation. I seek integration, but I recognize that once I'm at that, the wise, stoic, whatever, like I'm not going to want to talk to anyone. I literally need to keep myself just broken enough to want conversation, because there's too much fulfillment in not having things. No,
Fulfillment of what?
I was gonna say there's too much fulfillment in not having things to say. And then I'm like, wait, that destroys my identity. I don't want to say that anymore. Yeah.
Like, what hole are you trying to fill in that fulfillment? Being seen?
Fulfillment in general, I think.
Mm.
Like that's what I'm still seeking basic fulfillment. I'm at a very basic level still.
You're enough.
Oh, I mean, sometimes being aware of the truth doesn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you're perfect right here, right now. This is exactly where you're supposed to be, and there's nowhere else you could be. So you're done.
There's nowhere else I could be.
That's the thing. That's the thing about the alchemical transmutation, right? It's not the transmuting the lead into gold isn't the gold and the lead don't change. It's realizing the lead is gold to begin with.
Lead is also very unpredictable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the least predictable.
Isn't it just?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also gold because it's enduring and never goes anywhere, right? It's always shining.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It pretty much already is gold.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the other things.
Just realizing it. It's just like you're okay. That's what it is.
Yeah. My mind seeks. Like my life is fine. My mind constantly seeks. I want to be the edge of human thought.
Yeah.
And I know it's meaningless for my spiritual attainment. And I want it so badly.
Why? Whoa. Why that rejection? Why is it?
Yeah, it's interesting to call it a rejection. I appreciate that. I think I wrestle with the devil a lot. Like I love knowledge. I love understanding. I love all things of the mind. I love the decompartmentalizing reduction process, even though I know,
can I ask how it makes you feel?
You know what? It makes me feel distracted from other things. It's those other things being that thing that I'm conflicted with. So I really enjoy the knowledge of the mind. And I think my soul wants me to focus on silence and peace and play and things that need no knowledge. In fact, knowledge gets in the way, makes you think about the future, come up with narratives, you get anxious about it. It just takes the future away from you. So as soon as that knowledge gets applied to real life, it's no longer helpful, but that knowledge applied to lack of life is really cool. So I do struggle with finding that balance, which is probably why I seek integration. And I'm probably avoiding balance because I know it's going to give me nothing to do anymore.
Oh, that's weird.
Except sit
so
under.
So you're considering, from what I'm hearing, you're considering your identity to be that of a seeker. So once you're done seeking, you don't have no personhood anymore.
Okay, so thank you for helping me understand. I do still have strong identities that I can't see. Another thing, I think that a narrative that I keep on putting to myself is that I'm much more comfortable without identities. So I don't like any prefixes. I don't like any titles. I don't like claiming I'm a this or a that. I actually really stepped out of that and tried hard for the profile on Mighty Networks. Like I really made myself just pretend to be okay with saying, oh, I'm a poet. Oh, I'm a painter. So I will definitely meditate on my identity as a seeker and what that means for my quest. Because I do feel like I'm on a quest. I feel like it's an esoteric quest, but therein, if that's the narrative and it's a quest, if I don't come up with something as the like gem to my quest, as to like, the chalice or whatever is on the end of the line here, if I don't come up with something, like I'm just gonna have to forget about it and die at peace. Like, you know what I mean? Like And I tell myself that too. I'm like, if worst comes to worst, you're on your deathbed and you're cool with being this the whole time. But to create the story or to propel it for, like, to push it into the future, you, I guess, have to convince yourself there's still something to get, which now I guess brings it a little full circle, because you were saying how, and it's obviously true, with just a little knocking on spirit's door once or twice. It's very
Yeah.
true. There's nothing to have or get.
Okay. Or feel like you don't have. That's the other, it's weird to think about, right? Because so much of society is geared towards pushing us to feel like we don't have what we need.
Well, for sure.
And yeah, but that's true, right? There are things that, you know, quality of life is not trivial.
No.
You know, so like it's not like I'm saying the social project and modern civilization should revert to something. But there's where it feels like I'm resisting saying the system, because it's not the system as such. It's one piece of a system that it has its incentives aligned such that it rewards corruption in certain places.
Well, competition.
Yeah, competition's okay. Competition is not the antithesis of good. It's the corruption of competition that's awful, right? Because we look at the Olympic Games and that's competition, and we all want that to be as least corrupt as possible.
But then the corporation behind it.
Right? But the desire, like,
yeah,
that I perceive from basically everybody, is like gathering together in worldwide peace to hold athletic competitions is something that's basically sacrosanct and should be treated as such, and putting money, it really fucks the project.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But that's not competition as such. That's awful.
No,
It's
agreed.
It's the competition where you're willing to cut the other dude's throat. That's awful.
Yeah.
Right. Where you can't shake hands afterwards and go like, wow, that was amazing. You did way better than me. You know, where you can't get to that point. That's where the corruption starts to get in, because that's where you're willing to do everything you can to not get there. Right. Where I don't want that bastard to win. Just, you know, but that's me up there. That's just me running a different experiment. So if they win, I win.
Yeah.
I didn't run that experiment, but it's still us winning. Like, great. The world record for the mile is just going lower and lower. Who gives a shit who does it, in some sense? Like,
yeah, no, I don't.
yeah, right. But like, it's just humans, right? Just humans are amazing. So we're all pushing, we all find that attractive, because we're just like, wow, let's see if we can get even higher.
The betterment of self is
betterment of self, like, because it's, you know, we recognize that, I think, on some fundamental level, that's the betterment of all of us. Like, that's the deepening of our potential. Like, oh, I can do that if I do that.
Watching someone else do something also gives us permission.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. To try, right? Because it's not forging a new path. Like, we're all forging our own path, right? But when you see somebody that's gone down something similar, you can go like, okay, so I don't have to hack away the path with a machete now, or put on really thick boots to walk down that path. I can, you know, walk, you know, a couple of miles down this path and see what I find. But this person cleared the way for me. And that's, you know, the gratitude that many cultures have towards ancestors, I think, is rooted in that basic fact that somebody cleared the path for you at some point, you know, because you're not starving when you're born. Like, that's, you know, like I feel like there's, I don't know. This is a judgment. So this is probably me judging a past self, but it's like, I feel that we frequently forget and are not taught well that our ancestors made things radically easy for us. compared to what they could be. And the modern trend of seeing our ancestors as pure evil.
Who says that? Oh, I understand where you're getting that from now. Sorry.
Yeah. It's not I wouldn't say it's a modern trend, like in terms of like the last 20 years or so. I'm saying when you look at history and try and get to history through the lens of what would I do in this person's situation, and then you carry into that all of your modern contrivances and
presentism.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh no, I would do so much better than this person in that situation. And you have no one has any right to say that. No one has any right to say they do better than somebody else in a situation, because if you were in that situation, you would be that person. Like, you would have all their experiences, all of the things that happened to them, all their traumas and triggers that led them to do whatever thing they did.
Yeah.
And you would be them, and you would have no choice either. Like, most of us don't have, I mean, we're projecting what we feel is our agency, but I think ultimately it's just, it's like the sun running an experiment on and using us to work out different ways to push forward, but it's not intentional. It's just like what consciousness does. It's like, does this work? Does this work? Does this work? And the way we do it really far into the future. Like, most animals can only do it a couple of minutes, or seconds, or, some things will store food for the winter.
Right.
But anything longer than 2 years, they can't plan for. Right. So we don't have, and those are all, I don't want to denigrate those. Those are all basic steps to where we are, like realizing that seasons exist, and realizing, phases of the moon do things, and realizing day and night cycles and all that stuff is just a gradual awareness of time. Yeah, but it leads to this point where, like, we can foliate time like really deep, right? Like science fiction-y deep, like literally. That's how we get science fiction.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And that capacity, I think, is the same thing that generates anxiety.
I
So
forget where I heard this, but someone once told me that fear of the future is anxiety and fear of the past is depression.
Yeah.
And I have suffered both of these things, especially fear of the past.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense to me. And it perpetually reminds me that presentism is toxic, to throw it out of the present, but the present is literally everything that we can achieve. Now, this whole conversation of agency and it's how good are we at dealing with our present?
Yeah.
And once we're there, okay, cool, you can navigate the ship. Now you have control. Now what? Like, now you're a creator too. And that's when the set of questions, I guess, kind of changes a little bit for the experience. But
yeah, for me, when I got there, I guess I rushed through it, because the clicking over to that part of like the waking up and being like, oh, I'm the creator, right? That was so fleeting for me, because in a sense, I've been creative a lot of pretty much all my life. It's not something I could ever control. So, but to integrate that, to have enough confidence to show people and be like, this is actually okay, is what is taking me the longest time. And it's the perception that I'm not enough. My work does not achieve what I think it can achieve, that I don't show it to people. And so I have a large creative body of work that nobody's ever seen, because I don't think it's that good. And it might not be, right? I'm not super disciplined about it. That's the thing. See, I'm a decent critic, unfortunately. And so I know when something's not that good. And I know when somebody's not heart isn't in it. And I know when work comes out and it's just like, yeah, I think you could have done better. Like there's a lot of obvious flaws. And being able to see that in your own work is beneficial at one level and self-destructive at another. And reconciling those things has been a big challenge for me. It still is, to self-advertise and be like, hey, I think this is cool enough that you might think it's cool, is not a position I find myself comfortable with most of the time.
What kind of work are you talking about here? Creative work.
Writing, music, drawing, art,
Yeah,
things of this nature. Storytelling,
all the good stuff.
all the good stuff. Dance. There you go. People probably don't know that. I mean, I didn't.
I just assume everyone's a dancer.
Yeah, well, we are, right? All humans are singers and dancers. It's just how practiced are you? It's not epiphenomenal. It goes back to spiders, for Christ's sakes. Everybody's a dancer. And birds sing. So
yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Even crows are songbirds.
Yeah.
Even the darkest of crows, or the darkest of birds, are songbirds.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's so the seeker thing is I guess something that I don't know. When I got to that thing, there's a lot of I mean, so I went through a period in my teens and 20s where there was, the occult fascination was inevitable. And because I want to know what people are hiding. That's just part of what I do. Like I don't like elephants in rooms. Like I can feel them, really. Like I feel them in my body. Like I'm sure other people do too. They just don't realize they do it. Or they don't think it's that thing, because they're so used to an elephant being in the room. They're so
Is
used
it more
to
than empathy? I was asking myself this morning if that very thing is empathy, or is it more than empathy?
I think empathy is a slice of that. Yeah.
At least a slice, yeah.
Yeah, at least. Yeah, it's sometimes too easy for me to empathize with other people. I remember seeing when I was 4, even a little younger than that, my parents took me to Mexico, and I remember seeing real poverty for the first time and being totally blown away and having no framing or like any sense that I didn't understand why they had so little and I had everything I needed. Like it didn't track, right? And this, I'm not saying these weren't, I wouldn't say sad people, right? So my feeling there is no, it's a projection. It's worse than compassion. It's not compassion. It's a projection. It's saying I would feel awful were I them.
I feel like that actually can easily be compassion.
That can easily be compassion, but that's such a lie. It's such a lie because you don't know. You don't know and you can't know, right?
Okay, sure.
So,
okay,
so it's instantly a projection. Instantly, you can recognize it as a projection that you're saying, man, that looks like it sucks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right? But that's based on a framework that you have that was delivered to you. It's not their framework, right? Like listen, there's people in this world that are, I mean, what we in the West would consider beneath the poverty level and are happy, right? They're just totally content. They don't feel a lack. They don't feel this anxiety. They don't feel this depression. They're fine. So what exactly So when we see somebody that's poor, and this is, by the way, not talking myself out of compassion for the poor, I'm not trying to do that. I know there are people that are engaged in that project, not what I'm after. But when we see that, I think it behooves us to recognize that we can't know that person's experience, and we can't know if they're choosing to be there or not, because they might be.
I mean, I guess you can have misdirected compassion.
Yeah. And I'm not saying have none, and I'm not saying always, but I'm saying recognize, I'm saying it's important to do both. I'm saying it's important once you have that compassion, once you have maybe I can help this person, you have to realize that the instinct of maybe I can help this person also comes with it, and from it, a projection of perceived lack on your part, not their part.
Yeah. In my definition of compassion, I don't need to give anything to anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's simply the feeling.
It's simply, yeah.
I'm understanding what it's like I'm trying to understand what it's like to be you.
There's no action. Action is meaning
Okay.
now. Yeah.
I got you. Okay. So compassion is simply the sitting with.
Yeah. I think it like I appreciate the now differential that I'm experiencing through these definitions of compassion, though I still sit pretty comfortably with compassion definitively being, even if I'm projecting myself onto another person's situation, I'm only appreciating how it would be for me in that situation. There is still an empathizing, there is still, though there is no knowledge, there's no reality, right? Like, and now that I've reset it too, yeah, I would probably, there's another better word for it than compassion.
Mm-hmm.
So
because it's also you're bringing your own identity into it, because
yes.
you can't not, because you're and when you do that, you're in, I mean, to use that parlance, you're erasing their experience from that thing, because you're putting in your experience in their place, not recognizing what their experience is. So I mean, really the thing I guess I'm mainly advocating for is seeing the whole person, and not seeing them simply through the lens of the perceived lack on your part, whatever that might be. It might be financial, it might be health, it might be whatever it is, right? I'm zooming out a little bit from poverty to generalized perceived lack, because that's the salient piece of that story. Like when I was looking at that kid and they're happy and I'm happy, what I should feel is happy, right? I shouldn't feel like and should is also a projection, right?
It is a really interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but what seems right, what seems, if I were to not impose myself into that, impose my identity fully into that space, I could zoom back a little bit and see that this person doesn't have any perceived lack, doesn't share this perceived lack. I can look at the relation
But that's a projection too, to also assume that they don't.
Also assume, right?
But they're not just having it.
It's forgive me, I'm not. It's not exactly the projection. It's the trying to make space for the other person's experience to sort of touch yours, rather than saying, I know what's good here.
Yeah, that's well said.
I think. And I'm not sure that that's the projection. I think that's the pulling, that's trying to pull the projection back into your own sphere, and trying to make space for the other person.
You're describing curiosity a little bit too now.
Yeah, inquiry, curiosity, because you want to get a full picture. I mean, that would be, if I perceived lack, ideally, if I was firing on all cylinders and not tired, hungry, thirsty, I would want to find out more, and not simply jump to a intervention.
Right.
But my instinct is to intervene in situations like that. My instinct is to be like, oh, this person is lacking something. Can I help?
So yeah, here's somewhere that we don't have common ground necessarily, because I've done some traveling and I've been culture shocked, but I just really love to escape my culture through others. Like the moment I can sit down and be poor or drifting with someone, Like I'm there.
Cool. Interesting. That's interesting. That's not an experience I've really had. I mean,
It's a great escape for me
I imagine it
coming
is. I
from
mean,
where,
to
yeah.
be, let me think. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't know what you mean exactly to be poor, to be temporarily without funds in that moment, because, or are you like actually like broke?
Well, like I've had several homelessness bouts where
Okay.
I've pretty much consciously not like it, I could have created other circumstances,
Mhm.
right? Like I didn't have to go bum around the West
Right.
Coast to blah 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 blah. But I was genuinely attracted to having nothing. I was genuinely attracted to it was misassociation, but when I'm sitting on the street corner smoking a cigarette with a punk homeless person, I have nothing except that cigarette. And there
Right.
is a lot of freedom in that moment. Like there
Mm.
really is. There really is. And like from certain perspectives, that's lack of responsibility, but from other
Right.
perspectives, that's the temple. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I've
Well, yeah, that's an interesting. Yeah, I like that. That's an interesting perspective. I didn't really. I've heard that before, but not really in the context where I could put it in this sort of space. So that's really the fascinating thing to think about. We that where you got that, so you feel like you had a sense of freedom that was lacking in your life before that. I'm curious. I'm curious what you did with it after you found it.
oh, I'm still struggling, I think, with that very
Oh,
thing. Yeah, it's been up and down. I feel like
mhm.
I made a lot of progress in my late teens, early 20s, and then I hampered all of it. Like
Mhm.
I went to now, okay, now it's time to go be a human being and not do all the things that I want to do. And I'm just coming out of that
Ah,
period. Like,
okay.
oh no, I abandoned things that really, and I don't mean like going to be homeless, but like
Mhm.
yeah, like I used to live for things and then I stopped living for things and then I flirted with death for a little while, you know. So yeah.
Do you want to talk about that more? It seems like you have a story there.
I don't know
Or
where to begin. Yeah.
uh-huh.
I'm a bit of a cult baby. Like to
Okay.
so I was born into a religious Christian purist right wing cult. Um I also was born in like a very like villagers raised me like little Italy, Montreal. They didn't learn to speak the language that they came here for. They didn't learn, they came here and now they were here and that was it. They held on to their culture a lot more than their cousins back home. uh so like I grew up like again like I very much related to your like roughness through privilege thing. um you know, we're Italian. I've never been hungry,
I'm
but I've been
Italian.
starved of many other things. You're Italian,
I'm
Roberto.
Sicilian.
I'm Sicilian. I'm from
You're
Palermo. Yeah.
my grandmother's my dad was born in Messina.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
My grandparents on my dad's side were born in Palermo. Yeah.
Jesus.
That's the hot blood. There you go. Right there.
Oh, wow. That's, I stopped, like I said, I stopped thinking things like this are weird anymore.
Yeah. That's also why we're attached to the family business. These people won't let us go for the love of
They
God.
they won't shut up.
Oh, yes. Now, what was
Yeah,
I
that's deeply
saying?
traditional. Italian family businesses are like, it's weird how freaking like hard, like how that pattern reifies even through everything else is like, are you kidding me? But there it is. So what are you gonna do?
Individualism is a strange beast in Italian culture.
Word.
Because yeah, I felt very disenfranchised by the roles given to me growing up.
Mhm.
And the only option I felt I had with them was full on rejection, full on
Right.
aggressive rejection. I
Wow.
didn't realize I could integrate them in my being. So I gave
Mhm.
myself nothing. Now
Right.
I'm older, you know, I long for things that I could have given myself quite a while ago. And I know I'm still young enough to achieve everything I need
Yeah.
to climb the mountain, so to speak. But yeah, no, I've suffered a life of rebellion. Rebellion sucks. Rebellion is not cool. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool, but it's
You have to do it. That's the thing. That's the
yeah.
thing. Like it's weird, right? Because we're like, now we're like you're through it and you're on the other side and you're like, oh, if these kids would just fucking figure it out and I could figure it out earlier, but you can't. That's the deal. Like everybody's got to go through their own rebellion. Like everybody's got to be like, no, the system sucks. And then you go like, oh no, shit.
That's not rebellion. Knowing the
No?
system sucks is not rebellion.
Well, that's
Being an aggressor to that system that sucks is rebellion.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's my life course is just more on course now.
Right,
I still want to break it down.
Point.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? It's the same. Like for me, it's the same because there's obviously things I want to change, and there's levers that I'm building so that I can, you know, change them with minimal necessary force.
Yeah.
And that's all the case. And but I don't have the burn it down thing that I think you're talking about. I did at one point have that burn it down attitude, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not foreign to me, but like at this point where I'm through the burn it down attitude, but I realize also that everybody's got to go through that burn it down phase.
Yeah, it's just like the vagal theory, right? Like you got to move through that aspect of the nervous system.
Seems like it seems like there's a thing, and people get stuck there, and it's it sucks.
Yeah, I've been stuck there for about 10-15 years myself.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, I don't know how long I was in mine, but mine was more probably my burn it down phase was probably just more focused inward and slow. There was no I mean, there were outward signs, like, but no grand actions, no real, you know, part of my whole thing was you know, succumbing to inaction. So it was, you know, it doesn't manifest in terms of anything that's that noticeable. So
well, it's just like basic trauma breakdown of like that. A false sense of urgency is a traumatic response, anxiety.
Yeah.
So whenever I feel like I need to hurry, I'm like learning how to just take a moment to appreciate that as you know, that very thing.
Yeah. It's that urgency. It was so funny. I remember my mom telling me at one point that my kindergarten teacher gave her a report. This is a Montessori school, right? So like they actually paid decent money to send me there, allegedly. I don't know. But I just moved to plug my thing in. But so we're at the school, and the teacher gave them a report about me, where it's like, he has no sense of urgency.
Oh my God, as a bad thing. Oh my God.
Oh man, yeah. So, but that's my deal. Like I just, things take as long as they take, you know, getting to that point and being like comfortable with that idea that I'm like, as long as I keep showing up, right?
Yeah.
And I don't totally disassociate, and I don't like get into that frame of mind where I feel it would be better if I didn't show up, like, because, you know, I think probably a big barrier for me has been that, like, I don't like this continuity. Like that really disturbs me. So if I miss, like, for example, if I would miss a college course, if I would miss one day, I would consider the entire thing blown.
Okay.
And just like, yeah. So the perfectionism, that thing has been a struggle for me. So now I recognize that my main struggle is just showing up when I had to do something else before, and being comfortable with the idea that I had a justification. And the thing is, a justification is not really what I'm after, but it's like getting comfortable with the idea that I couldn't have done otherwise, really, you know, that I'm okay. Like if I had something come up, then I can just inform people, and then that's okay. But before, it would be like a really
I would re-traumatize myself like every single time it happened, with this uh, uh, burden of perceived expectation
Yeah.
that had I bothered to stop and actually inquire about, wouldn't have been there.
But you had to find the permission to do that first.
Right.
You
That's
had the
it.
capacity to do that at the time, even as a child.
Right.
You had to have the permission.
Permission or capacity, both. I mean, both. I mean, I'm not sure that, one's internal and one's external in that way, but
Yeah.
once you collapse those two things into one field, then it's still all, it's one inhibition from one side or the other. Either there's a physical inhibition or a relational or a mental.
I think that's why though some of us get delayed in our development, because we have to get old enough to find those things from our own relationships and those permissions. Whereas I think like when we will say like, oh, you came from a secure, supportive family, all that supportive means to me is like, you can do it. You like you could actually, sure, if that is that your idea. Like when I brought ideas up, it was immediate criticism or ignoring it. So I didn't have, you know what I mean? Like a support is just saying, okay, it's just giving permission. Encouragement is extra. Just permission is basic human needs from a support network.
Yeah, agreed. Like just permission to be like, you don't have to, even finding the permission to say you're frustrated is such a difficult first step for so many of us to get to, because we don't even want to admit that there's a problem.
How often are we treated with open arms when we're frustrated?
Right. Almost never, right? Almost always closed fist, right? Or like, hey, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
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 This is the thing. My wife, but I've been doing this. This is our more recent like struggles have been like, okay, we need to recognize when we're frustrated and tell the other person. And we're not like screamers typically. We don't have big fights. I can have meltdowns where I get overwhelmed and things can go pretty sideways, but I'm not, fortunately for me, fortunately for me, but I'm not the kind of person where I have to struggle with a history of abuse, violent abuse, just sexual. So it's a different thing, but I don't have to channel like violent anger away from my wife, which is really nice, because some people don't have that option.
Right.
Like I have compassion for those people, unfortunately, for some, that where it's like, and it's like not having the tools, right? It's just not having the tools. I'm sorry, I forgot where I was going with this.
That's all right.
That's okay. Yeah. Huh.
You were talking how you and your wife tell each other when you're frustrated.
Oh, the frustration. Yeah. So part of that struggle has been like, there's a lot of barriers we haven't had to contend with that other couples have to contend with in that space. And so I'm just making,
I feel like you're creating a scenario where you haven't had to work as hard as you perceive other people having to work. And I think that's incorrect as well. Like, it is hard work, even though you haven't been physically violently, like, you know what I mean? Like that had like
I am. No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for catching that. That's exactly right. Yeah. I'm trying to this is funny. I guess I'm trying to lower the bar a little bit on my own achievement.
Perfectionism.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, it's hey, people have gotten through much worse. It could be worse.
I just saw myself in you with the seeker thing. You always need to know there's more to achieve.
Yeah, it's there too. I mean, that's what we are, right? Listen,
if the modern world and you've gone through that, and then also at the end of that you're like, yeah, but magic, then yeah, you're you're like, okay, then you're one of us. You're just like one person who's never going to be satisfied.
Which, by the way, that was the genuine feeling when you would mention magic in class, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's talking about magic in front of all these strangers. Oh my God, I would feel uncomfortable if that was me, right? But ultimately, even beyond that, it was like, this guy knows it all comes down to magic. No one else seems to know this. Yeah.
It seems too, right? This is the weird thing. It's like, yeah, okay, so what is magic? What are we talking about? Because we're not even, it's
Yeah.
so like that, putting a pin in that definition is so hard, because we're not talking about, okay, so here's the things we're not talking about. We're not talking about stage magic,
No.
but that's included. But we're talking about the application, what appears to be conscious application of volitional agency over reality.
Applying the esoteric path.
Yeah, except once you realize the key, however you get there, right? Whatever system takes you there, because I'm pretty convinced at this point there's not a system. It's just whatever gets you there is the thing that worked for you, and that's the experiment you ran, and that worked. Great, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can help somebody else find it. Cool. But what I've also, in my experience, is it's never the same. Nobody's pathway in is identical. Like it's all like, if you even being raised where you're raised with a bunch of Christians, nobody has the same definition of Christian. Probably, like, everybody's got like their little thing they believe that's a little like, yeah, but that guy's crazy. So
Yeah.
yeah, so even at that micro level, it's different, right? So expecting any one path to be the thing, like apart from systems that try to be a framework for all paths, like Taoism or something like that,
Yeah, understandings of reality.
Yeah, it's not even a path, it's not even a framework. It's just like, yeah, it's like, understand that your path is your path, and like there's going to be, it's this thing as such. It's never going to be pure, it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be a spot of one in the other. It's constantly swirling, it's doing all this stuff. That symbol's infinitely deep.
Oh yeah, symbols.
Yeah, right, symbols. Yeah. So that kind of stuff is like, whatever symbols get you there, great. Whatever gets you to the bottom of you, and then you start realizing that inner and outer world aren't different, like if that's a perception, and then that you move from the shift comes from seeking to be a creator to simply being a water molecule in a river, where you're having an infinitesimal direction of the flow, but you're in the flow. That's the thing. So you're in, and then once you realize you're in the flow, you're in the flow.
Oh, okay. Goes the other way.
Yeah, and then it's great. Then that's where we're trying to, as far as I can tell, this is my experience, but it seems like that's what we're all looking for at bottom. We're just trying to reintegrate to the flow. Whatever that is actually not important to the integration.
Sure.
That's that I think a lot of people get hung up on, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing? How do we relate to it? And it's like, no, none of that shit actually matters for putting yourself in it. Right? It's all cool and fun and important, and we should investigate it, and we should try and improve it, and we should try and make, like, how good could the river get if we all were like, imagine
the whole river was sentient.
Yeah, but I'll just like being like, okay, I'm doing this, you're doing this, great, and then you could do the image is you could do anything really. Like if water could control itself, its own flow by communicating to itself, there's nothing, an oxygen and two hydrogens can't accomplish.
Truly.
Yeah, it's stars. Like you separate it apart and slam it back together real hard, you get fusion.
That's how dragons are made.
Right. Sure. The violent principle manifest as such. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but Bruce Lee said, be water, my friend. Maybe we're not taking that simple little phrase quite seriously enough.
Well, an individual like myself tells myself to be fire a lot more than it tells myself to be water. And then when I'm too fiery, it tells myself to be earth. Then when it's too earthy, I go to water. Yeah. Then I make some mud. Then we're good. Yeah. And the air, I don't know about the air. The air is like I'm like, that's just it. Like a fish doesn't realize it's in water, theoretically. That's me with this mind stuff. Like, I know I'm there, but I don't know I'm there. It's just all very visceral.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that tracks. Yeah.
Well, I feel like it. I feel like it tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, creatures that are all time and no space. No, creatures that are all time in their own space are everything they've ever been at once. That's what I was getting to earlier with the dragon and the Cthulhu thing.
Yeah, the dragon, man. Yeah, conceptualizing, trying to think of all the clicks as one thing.
Oh, you know what though? More important than that was I have a lot of points of reference that are salient right now, but you were describing magic in the form of a sentient river. And I believe that was commenting on the process. Now, obviously, there are goals along the way, but I would say that, all right, I would say that magic to me was something that I discovered I was doing anyway. So I might as well be doing it consciously. Definitely had to work through the demonization of it from my past. But that actually led me to like aggressively dig my claws into it, not just like, oh, it's there and it's cool. It's like, no, I had to go and accept it. I had to go through the lives of what it meant to be a witch. And like, I don't know if I'm regressing my linear memory. It doesn't matter. I'm regressing memory built into this system, this meta system. And there's a lot of inconcluded memory out there. There's a lot of memory that just like is longing for permission to move on, essentially.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. And okay, so and I'm just gonna let me know when you have to leave. Yeah, just so you know.
Whenever my buddy gets here for our business meeting, that's it.
Okay, sounds good. You have a busy day. It's good to have business meetings on Wednesday.
Yeah, but it's for our game company, so it's fun. So it's
perfect.
Yeah.
No, it's good. As far as I'm concerned, the work we ought to be doing is what we're doing anyway.
100%.
Yeah,
this is it.
It took a lot of grief and strife to come to that conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, this is so good. Fuck. I'm so having such a good time.
Oh, well, cheers to that. So am I.
Yeah.
There's not too many people that have enough of the same interests as me to have like an embodied conversation. I'll find people that can talk philosophy. I'll find people that can talk the environment or math or blah, blah, blah. But not too many people think of themselves as being successful, being integrated. And I'm going to just go with that as being a projection now that I've heard myself say it and work on that because I can get something out of that, I'm sure.
So you
Yeah.
perceive me as being integrated? Is that what you're saying? I'm not sure.
I think what I just said is people perceive themselves as not being successful once they integrate things because we're like a specialty culture. Like
Oh, okay.
we like specialty. We like
hyper specialization. Yeah.
Yeah.
The people that are doing the broad brush thing is very hard for us to make it to the point where we can comfortably do it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot.
Yeah.
You're riding on a lot.
Yeah.
You're the crest of the wave, but the wave is not you. The wave is, yeah. Which brings me back to ancestors. Okay, so so now that I know what kind of culture you come from, I feel more responsible to have to dish out the ancestry talk.
It's my dad's Sicilian, my mom's Australian.
Okay, so my dad's Sicilian, my mom's Italiano. We got
Italiano. From Rome or where from?
Just outside, yeah.
Outside, okay.
Mountains. I don't even know. I've asked her a million times. My memory is very salient to only my own things. Oh my God, it's called ADHD. Yeah.
Hi. Yes. Welcome to the club.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm a club member in other places too, but yeah. So ancestry, like when I criticize my Italian ancestors, specifically when I criticize them,
which one's the fascists or just in general, like all the way back?
Oh, I don't even think of them. You know what? The fascism is so built in. I don't think of them as.
I know, right? My dad, he got a CD of fascist songs.
Oh yes.
So I'm like, what are you doing?
It's the vibe he's looking for. Like yeah. That's my dad would probably really appreciate that. I should send him a playlist. So yeah, like so I criticize my own personal family for being Christian when they should have been Catholic even. I'm like, there's so much more mysticism in Catholicism. Like, why didn't you?
That's like the most Italian thing I've ever heard.
Right? There's not enough mysticism in the sect you picked. Huh? Like
that's great. That's so good. It's like you're just flipping the critical Italian bullshit, right? I was like, you're not even the right Christian.
Yeah, no, it goes back and forth. We yeah.
Like a Katsudishi, yes.
So but built into all of Christianity, Catholicism, neo-pagan, whatever, well, maybe not original pagan, but is this it built, like it's in the Bible. I think it's in one of the 10 commandments, like honor your mother and your father, which when that becomes a religious doctrine, it's you are never, like my mother used to actually say, like, but you don't understand, I'm always going to be smarter than you because I'm older than you. I came first. I'm always going to have a better answer than you.
Holy shit.
Wow. I know it goes deep, guys.
Talk about misreading the Bible. Good Lord. Oh my God. Well,
that's purism for you.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That's crazy.
Taken literally, but I like my lens of ancestry has been through that. Like, you're not even giving me a chance to exist here. Yeah. Like I have no contribution to give you if I'm literally nothing until you die. Well, unless I start banging them out, and then I could be their authoritarian governor. You know what I mean? Which is how the mama's boy has been raised. Oh my God. The only person that can ever, that you have power over becomes your children. And then, just toxic relationships happen.
100%. It's a lot of Italian men are like that. It's just really gnarly.
I said mama's boy, but genuinely, that's a universal, it's a universal term.
Yeah.
I'm a mama's boy.
Right. No. Yeah, no, it happens to me too. Like my mom's Australian. It still bleeds in. It's still like, and she's,
you know, the opposite of that, you know, to the detriment in the other direction sometimes.
Right.
Where it's like she's not willing to interfere so much that there were times when she couldn't assert herself on my behalf.
Yeah.
You know, where an Italian mom would have no problem, like,
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
you know,
Yeah.
bringing some bullshit to the fore if she thought that you were fucking with her kid,
Yeah.
or if you thought, like, if you, as like, you know, as a teacher, if an Italian mom was like, this teacher is fucking with my kid, they would show up and be like, you know, and get in their face. You know, it might get really gnarly.
The only time my mom showed up was when some kid punched me by accident.
Hmm.
And then she showed up and punched him basically. And that was the only time. It's so true. Like you nailed it. Yeah.
So
I was so
yeah.
confused. I'm like, this means she loves me. Oh my God.
So yeah, right. And so like but to that point, like, you know, I was in a dance class when I was like 4, and an incident happened in that dance class that turned me off of dance for basically until I was I don't know, like
EDM and
38.
acid? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was even after. I don't think it was even after hallucinogenics. I think I think I was several trips deep before I could even touch that.
Actually,
Like,
agreed.
yeah.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So it was really, it was a pretty traumatic experience because an adult got in my face and yelled at me, like, and this was a teacher, and then I just didn't. I had no tools to process that at all.
Yeah.
And
I think I can still feel the shock a little bit. Like,
yeah, oh dude, yeah. So you know, it's really funny. I was taking so I moved up to Portland like in 2019 we moved here, and Rachel Bryce, who I've been following on Instagram because my wife's a fan, but I became a fan. She's a I don't know, tribal fusion belly dancer, I guess.
okay.
Person. Awesome. Anyway, she opened a dance studio like down the street from our house, and I was like, well, if that's not a sign,
Yeah.
I should go do that, right? Like, I should go do that. So I went, I took 4 belly dancing classes.
That's
I
awesome.
cried like a baby in the car after every single one of them. Like, just, I don't know what's going on. My body's like shaking, like I'm having this. And then my wife told me about the story that my mom told her about the dance class. And I was like, oh man, that's right. And I went back there and processed it as an adult, you know, and reparented myself through that incident by saying like that's a wrong thing for an adult to do to you. No matter what happens, you're 4. So if an adult yells at you, it's that adult's fault.
Yep.
First of all. Secondly, you did nothing wrong. There was a mistake. It's an accident. It's not like, you know, you were doing a kid stuff and a girl thought you were making fun of her and you weren't. And that's a mistake that happens sometimes, and that's okay.
So it's also being misunderstood in the process.
Misunderstood in the moment. And yeah, in the moment, in the process, and you know, talking to myself the way I would have needed my mom or my dad to talk me through that moment, but they couldn't because they don't have my experience, right? So they don't know what I need in that moment. It's not on them to not have those tools either. It's the fact that there are those, like in the 80s, those tools didn't really exist in the popular culture where they were accessible to somebody, that they could give them to a kid and the kid can be like, oh, I can process it like this. Or you can have a conversation with a kid where the kid can ask you really hard questions and you can deliver some really unpleasant answers that are true, that the kid goes, wow, that's fucked up. And you go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And you go, yeah, things can be fucked up sometimes and we can move on and think, and that will be a thing that you process and you will grow from this. But
literally, that's the growth. Yeah.
That's the growth. Like pain and growth are like identical, just the speed is different. Right? Like,
I call it unconditional stress because the opposite is unconditional love. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But digging into that, like I hadn't really like touched like deep somatic trauma before in a way where I accessed it consciously.
Right.
You know, and then I kept going back because I was like, what is going on? Like, is this just a one-off, or like, and after the fourth class is when I had the like, that it was sitting and trying to process it with my wife. She told me that, recounted that story, which I already knew, but like I went through it again. Like I went through the incident like in my body again, and it was yeah, it was, you know, it re-traumatized me for a time. But like once I went through it, and having the tools that I had to process those things, like the trauma lasted a fraction of the time.
Yeah.
And that's what the tools provide. I feel like there's a misconception, or perhaps it's a, I don't know, perhaps it's just like advertising gimmickiness, that once you have the tools, like the trauma is not there anymore, or you can't be re-traumatized or something like that.
I don't know. I don't have
I
the
don't know.
answer to that yet.
Yeah. But as far as I can tell, what the tools do is just allow you to process incoming trauma way faster than you
Right.
normally can.
It still just goes back to predictive memory. Like,
Mhm.
how will I do this again in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The same thing definitely happens for me every time I sing. I just burst into tears every time I hit a specific note.
Wow.
It's just, it does it. And
Yeah.
I'm getting like this summer, I have given myself the mission to just sing.
And
Like,
be there. That's beautiful.
yeah,
I,
I have a lot
I
of time alone, so it helps me to not have anyone hear me. Right.
yeah, right. I
Yeah.
know. For me too. Like I started taking singing lessons a couple of years ago because I realized that's something I wanted for a long time. I love singing, and you know, people told me I've had a good voice when I actually do it, but I'm unpracticed and untrained, and so I went to a vocal coach and learned, and I'm okay. Although doing it in front of other people is still, even in front of my wife, is still like tricky. Like even if we're in band practice, I don't
The
like,
particle
'cause
under observation, right?
yeah, yeah.
Acts
It's just like
differently. Yeah.
you tense up, and I can't, like my breath stops going because I'm worried about everybody else's perception of me, and then that feeds into the identity, and then that's like it just falls apart from there. So it's like learning to let go and maintain breathing through singing has been really, really challenging, but it's been good. And so I empathize with what singing.
Yeah, it inspires me to maybe pick up a lesson or two.
That would be good.
Imagine there's permission that will come out of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
It would be good. But yeah, man, the somatic stuff is just, it's so tricky to,
Like how we can't know, we don't know where memory is contained, and it's probably just our whole
whole
body.
thing.
Yeah.
All the space too. It's not different. That's the
Yes.
thing. All the memories, your memories, like on that painting back there, on all the stuff, that's all memories. It's all like, you know, once you get to that matter and spirit aren't different thing, then it's all memories. It's all stuff, patterns we incorporate from the past and want to take into the future and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Do we need a new word for the
Yeah.
reunification of mind and body? Because before it was just mind, I think.
I mean,
Before Descartes.
yeah, it was like that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely like a thing that my wife's standing here and she just gestured at my whiteboard. It's like,
Brainstorm.
yeah, I know. Thanks, sweetheart. Um, yeah, I'm working on it. I don't know. It's I mean, the game is an attempt. The game, it's not a game, but the experience that appears to be a game is part of that. Me trying to organize a structure so that other people at least have a framework to do this work at an earlier. I'm just hacking the machete, just hitting
So
the brush with the machete. You know?
are you saying that your game project is
Mhm.
more of a guide through the esoteric path towards
It's
made
three
shift?
things. Yeah, it's three things. So first and foremost, it needs to be a fun experience.
It's not salient,
That
it's not fun.
yeah, exactly right. Play is not epiphenomenal, and it's not frivolous. It is central central. It is the crux of how everything else works out. If we don't have play, nothing else happens. I'm very convinced of this. I'm willing to be wrong, but I'm pretty convinced at this point. Like you don't get hunting behavior without play. You don't get meat without play, meaning you don't get fire without play, meaning you don't get civilization without play. So I think play is damn central and really at the bottom. I mean, play comes before civilization. Rats have play. Okay, like let's get real.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that it came first.
Like it's sleeping, eating, fucking play. Like you can't be a mammal without one of those things.
Yeah. Okay. Eat as long as eating's in there. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. So with that in mind, yeah, it's got to be first and foremost, it's got to be fun. So otherwise nothing else about it works, because I think a lot of like games with like a message built in or whatever like that don't look to the fun first, and that's why they fail. And so the experience is fun, and if it does the other two things, great, but it's not, the central mission is the fun principle. So that's why
format the game.
Because that's why it would be viewed as a game, even though that game theory doesn't apply, because there's no optimal strategies, right? That's the part of the structure of it, is there's no optimal strategies because there's no optimal path, right? That's we're all taking it on our own. And so to delineate as a path or a strategy is optimal in a game design is to subvert the core message from the beginning. So I had to work out a way to create a game that had no optimal strategies in it. So that was kind of a weird project.
Sounds like you've achieved it. Yeah.
We'll see. It might be. I don't know. See, I right now it doesn't look like there's an optimal strategy, but who knows? You know, this is the kind of weird thing about like adding rules, right? Like you get more chaos, and so like there might be one. Somebody could find one. Like it definitely happens in games all the time where the designer's like, "Yes, I've designed a perfectly balanced experience," and then somebody goes, what about this big gaping hole?" And they go, "Oh, that's not there. That's just rule zero it because shut up." So first of all, it's a game. Second of all, it's a framework for finding the elements of your own wisdom tradition that work for you. So meaning like conceptualizing a self as these three entities contained within a body, and then allowing that to be a fractal type thing. So you have the mind, the psyche, soma, and then your pneuma, your breath, your spirit. That is the three elements. And those, allowing you to conceptualize yourself like that allows you to see where those things are damaged and where those scars are. And so that is what allows you to dig in and find the wisdom traditions that the thing is there's an element of the game where you can use an oracle or a divination method, but I don't specify any for exact purpose. So because I want the setting is also very minimal, because a lot of it's gonna be reifying concepts from the players, not from me, which is important if it's to be their story, right? So that's the second layer. Having a structure where players can try things out in a sandbox of a society and build their own wisdom traditions. And then the third layer is underneath all of that is the introduction to magic, which is you have something that you perceive as volitional agency, and the more you lean into the fact that you have responsibility over it, the more agency you will feel there, because ultimate agency and ultimate responsibility are functionally identical.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the bottom thing at the magic. And then other places make a claim about what to do when you get there, but I don't. And I don't for a very specific reason. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. But the reason I don't make a claim there, so like in the Divine Comedy, right? Dante makes a claim about what is there when you get to the
Heaven.
bottom, that's love, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is what's been difficult for me.
Mm.
This is saying, this is weird because this is saying hate can be there too. Hate can be that thing. The same at the bottom, which is your driving factor, and it's not wrong. It's just is, and you can channel it however makes sense to you. And that thing can drive the goodness in the world if you let it. But but you have to let it. And if you try and let it not drive, it'll drive anyway, but you won't notice.
Are you saying you have to be completely responsible for something you still have no control over?
Yeah, that's the paradox, right? The bottom is a paradox. You're totally responsible for something you have no control over.
I mean, it sounds amazing. That actually
Thank you.
sounds like the flow. Oh, the
It
game
sound-
sounds phenomenal too. This is like the first and only game I've wanted to play
Oh, thank you.
because it seems like I'm just like, I don't know. It seems I'm not a gamer at all.
That's fine. Yeah.
So I don't like the idea of sitting down with a game, but I love an idea of sitting down with my esoteric path. So, and I have criticized my ancestry for not giving me good guidance. Meanwhile, I know that mentorship, guidance, and all of these things gives permission, and permission is the ticket from your external world, right? Like it's the give and take. So yeah, I think that sounds really awesome. I'm curious as to how it sounds like it's developed but not active.
Yeah, it's developing. It's developing. So it's, I mean, it's in the framework of a tabletop role-playing game. So
Oh,
it's
even
more like-
better. Okay, great.
so it's not a video game, because the thing about a video game can never achieve this, because a video game can't be open fundamentally.
That's I had a lot of questions about that, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. And
A
I'm
video, well,
way
it
more
can,
interested
but
in
the only way you could do it is if it was somehow crowdfunded with live GMs. Like if it was like, it would have to be a sponge functionally a digital tabletop role-playing game, because the elements that the story process boots up from are the interactions between the imaginations of the players, including the guide, which is the GM role. But
yeah,
that,
so it's like
yeah,
esoteric
so because there's
Dungeons and Dragons.
otherwise it won't work. That's the whole point, right? So the whole point is inspecting yourself, if and bouncing yourself off of another entity that's reacting as a self. I mean, unless we get general AI at some point and that works. And I have serious doubts about that feasibility, because I don't think you can actually do relevance realization digitally. It seems like if you can, it would have to be something that happens during quantum computing, and
Even with multiple AIs all working together.
Could be. I don't know. In the future, who knows? Maybe
Well,
they'll figure
I
it
mean,
out.
the future has the
Right now, there's no programmatic way to do it, because it's inherently aprogrammatic. I have a framework that takes input and gives output, but there's a necessary human component to interpret the output, because otherwise the output's meaningless. Right. So it's creating an interpretive framework, not a series of mechanics, if that makes sense. So it's that's why I say it's less like a game, because it's not a game in which you play roles like in D&D, because I don't even confine you to one person.
Okay. Yeah.
Your main avatar, which is like this character called a fated, which is somebody who went through the apocalypse and lived.
Yeah.
And the apocalypse is still happening. And then as you move through the world, you gain people that join your troop, and those are like your confidants, close friends, people that believe in you and are willing to follow you into almost anything, and their skill sets mesh with yours, and the close circle, right? And then beyond that, you have communities that you interact with, and those are conceptualized as well. And then you have society, and then the world, and then the universe, and those scopes are all represented because because you can affect them.
Yeah.
So one of the things you can do, I'm not even sure if this is a thing you can do, but one of the things I have toyed with the idea of doing within the game is allowing players to rewrite the rules from within the game.
Sweet.
Like as their characters. Like their characters are like, no, reality doesn't work like this anymore. It's going to work like this now. And I don't know if that could be a genre too far for some people, and it might not be this particular experience that does that, but
sure.
I also have phases of this thing. So it's like the main experience is booting up like what basically appears to be a standard D&D campaign, roughly speaking, like where you have characters and there's opposition and stuff like that, but the pathway is such that the game will reify your opposite as your nemesis, because I'm asking you, like, part of it is inspection of self, so I'm asking you what your self is, and then I take that input and flip it, and that becomes the enemy of the,
That's cool.
Right. It's just, and so the point is that you can fight these things, and in doing so, generally speaking, what happens is you start externalizing your costs to either yourself, your troop members, your community, your society, the world, the universe. And the only way to not externalize your costs is to work with your opposite and try and find a way to synthesize a path that you both can coexist and not externalize each other's costs. So it's there's an element of like booting up game B in there. There's the processes and it was really cool, like doing the Rebel Wisdom thing with these guys, because so much of there's a number of like practices that were here that were things I was reaching for that hadn't been fully crystallized in the game, like
yeah, same.
Some of the circling practices and stuff like that, where I was like trying to figure out how to sort of help people express their volitional agency in a story.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've experienced around tables is that people are scared of exposing their creativity among others, right?
Yeah, their silliness, their unique.
Yeah. Especially when it, like, you feel like it's you, right? And you have an avatar, and it's a you avatar, and like people kind of get to see your inner self a little bit. That can be extra scary for some people. So the practices of that they were introducing that helped us sort of be comfortable with others and express ourselves more clearly were things that I was reaching for. And because Vervaeke and Schmachtenberger were part of the guest lecturer series, I was like, maybe I can get something out of this. And that utility, the structure of those practices has been incorporated at this point, because like I was looking for it. And so I'm taking the game's growing by, at this point, getting simpler, and just and the practices, the knowledge structures are getting refined. So I know the what, the who, the when, the how, and the why at each point, which is what I've been searching for, because a lot of games don't, either they'll forget their why, or their how is super complicated, or there's just too many what's to remember, or the relationship isn't clear. Yeah, it's just like, like these games that are just like, here's a, oh man, you get to be a cool superhero. Here's a list of abilities. It's fundamentally a 300-page book that's a list of abilities. And, this is one of the disconnects that I've seen in gaming too, that goes back to that's one of the first things that came up was learning styles, is like, those kind of games are great for people who really go with lists of facts, and they're boring as shit for people who are interested in the connective tissue. And so this is why I think, this is a hypothesis, but I think this is why like tabletop role-playing has been more or less male dominated and continues to be, because the structure of most games are geared towards lists of facts, not relationships.
Yeah, I feel the same way as someone who's tried to integrate myself into groups of gamer dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But so it's geared towards a certain learning style, and there's and like, and this is not,
this is not a male female thing, because there's plenty of guys, myself included, that lament the lack of that relational structure.
Yeah, I know plenty of girls that are totally
Yeah.
into it despite.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I didn't want to, I just want to plant that flag there and not say it's like this is a gender line thing, but but clearly there's a tendency. And but I think the tendency is re-reified by the fact that most of the people that enjoy those games go on to become designers and design games previous that are pretty much their fun experience, which is the list of fact games. And so we have this, this problem that's really no one's fault. It's just people following their own inclinations. But it creates a scenario in which certain people feel like they're left out. And so part of my radical inclusivity, I guess, is to try and build a game where both of those people can have fun at the same table with the same thing, and do it somewhat asynchronously. So my solution to that is basically the game takes place at three scopes, where you have your character sheet, that's your main dude and your troop on the other side. And you have a journal, which is your actual story, and your character sheet starts in the middle of that story, and then you start playing from the middle out, but every page turn is like a click of the clock, right? So you're going into your past to see threads in your past, and you're throwing threads into the future, and then stuff you find in your past is also throwing threads into your future. And so the game produces combinatorial explosion on purpose.
Nice.
Right? So you have to deal with it. So, and those things, and the things that you care about or don't care about are the things that make it onto the main, now they become everybody's problem type thing, right?
Like that.
Yeah, so that's the main, so the main board is kind of like a big sort of word cloud type thing where concepts are going to make it, and then certain concepts are going to be antithetical to each other, and that's where a bunch of the conflicts comes from. So, but it would, the journaling part only came out I only landed on that like 2 months ago, maybe.
Because that's when you started the course.
Yeah, but it wasn't, but I wasn't journaling at the time. It was just like where I was having discussions with my podcast, and we just sort of like, we were talking about this, and I was like, man, it's got to be like a middle out thing. And I was like, oh, how would you do that? Oh, I guess you have a book that starts in the middle. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So the whole structure like just fell into place. Like I remember exactly where I was. I was sitting on my friend Steve's couch, and he was just working on some Linux stuff over there, and I was just sketching in my book. And I looked up and I was like, holy shit. Yeah, it's a journal that starts from the middle. And like then I wrote down the whole thing. But it's just the confluence, just right. The ether of this, just like my brain's working on it. It's trying to figure out like,
yeah, it's computing, even if you're down here doing your
right. And, and part of my struggle is just to leave it the fuck alone when it's doing that and not bug it. I
like to time it for during the night, but sometimes you don't get blessed. Yeah.
It happens when it happens. It's just like, are you showing up in a space where you're allowing yourself to have that?
Yeah,
having that permission, as you said, which is really something I still struggle with, is like giving myself permission to do magic is tricky, because that, my dad's would always press me about that stuff, about like D&D and fantasy and stuff, because the only game my dad plays is chess. That's it. He's never played D&D. He's never attempted to meet me where I am on that kind of stuff.
There's a lot to take in for it.
Yeah, but it's also like, so part of my challenge was like justifying the inclusion of magic in this game, right? And so I've spent 10 years trying to do that. And it's only when I was like, oh, actually, the reason I have magic in this game is because magic's at the bottom of fucking everything. I had to get to this point. There was no other way to do it, right? And so this last trip, I went back and had, and my dad had this emotional openness that I'd never seen from him before. And I don't know if it's just because he's older, and like I'm sort of really far, I mean, not far away, but this is the first time we've seen each other in 8 months, really, in person. And that's a long time for us.
So, because even when I was going to college, I'd be back like at least every 2, you know. So talking to him about this and him having this emotional openness that was sort of new to me, I figured I'd test those waters. And I started talking about Giordano Bruno, who was this Renaissance. This was the guy that said all those stars up there, those are actually suns. And it's all one thing. And you've got this whole thing fucking backwards and twisted and upside down, and it's arrogant and self-centered. And the church was like, oh, fuck me? No. Fuck you. And they burned that dude. And he's on the stake. He's being burned at the stake I mean, he's basically just flipping him off from like, he's like, yeah, but look at the sky.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that's the ultimate fuck you. It's like, I'm not, you know, you can say you're right all you want, but look up. You know? It's like you think you're God-fearing. Okay, that's cute. That's cute.
It is, isn't it?
You know? Right. Yeah. And it's like you think, yeah, it's like you're scared to look up and realize the truth. And they set them on fire for that shit. So
yeah. Fearing God is the path of least resistance.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, in a sense. It is that sort of thing where the fear is like is a misconception based on the idea that you should have respect for a knife, right? Like
for a knife?
Yeah, for a knife. Like if you conceptualize God as a knife,
I have respect for a knife.
You have respect for a knife, but do you fear the knife? Not unless an idiot
holding
wielding
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends who's holding it. Exactly right. So that's where I see. I mean, that's fairly analogous to me. Like this is something that can create or destroy, and I have a healthy respect for its capacity in both regards. But to fear it is the wrong reaction because it's not doing anything to me that I'm not doing to myself.
Well, yeah, fear is another way of saying ignorance.
Yes. Yeah, that's another way of saying ignorance. It's something you don't know enough, so you're going to fill it in with the worst possible scenario because that's what we do.
That makes you feel like you're safer.
Right. Because you've conceptualized the worst.
Defending the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. The lie being obviously you have not conceptualized the worst possible scenario because it can always get worse.
Yeah. You're not creative enough.
Yeah.
In that regard, I mean, well, no, in that regard, no, use your creativity for
what you want. That's it. Like, because if you say good, you're fucked.
No.
Because no, because that's the start of totalitarianism. That's where we get all that from.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah. Sorry, you off. I'm just like, I'm getting.
No, I totally I'm right there with you. It's just, I forget what I was talking about. It's okay. Yeah, but it's all these things at once. Like I mean, the game is moving towards this thing where I'm trying to figure out like the best way to sort of boot up. I mean, as far as I can tell, the structure checks all the boxes for these guys. So it's like it's small groups talking to each other, meeting weekly, talking about like the most difficult things in society and how to solve the problems and how to do it without externalizing the costs. And if I can build a game around that, then maybe a percentage of those people will try and do what I want, and which is to take that structure and try to apply it to their own lives in the world. So that, but I'm teaching them a new way of seeing too. So I'm teaching them to see through the eyes of their character, and their character being awake through the apocalypse gains the access to the strands of fate, so they can see the future and the past and stuff. So it's more concretized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're okay. So you're giving someone permission to act as their higher, all-knowing self, right? Which is the person, which is the self that I am trying to embody.
Right. Yeah. Permission is right. Permission is right, because I feel like a lot of people don't get that permission. And
I mean, I think at this point we've used the word so much that a negative association can almost be made to it. But I like when I come up with a better term, I'll let you know.
Yeah, right.
allowance, like letting, like.
Yeah, it's permission, but it's also acceptance, like on a certain level. Oh, I remember the Giordano Bruno. So I
Yeah.
brought that up, my dad, because there was a Kickstarter not too long ago where it was like Giordano Bruno's like trees on magic, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna back that for sure. And my dad's been reading about him like recently, like and like I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I started digging into my like what I'm doing, and he was just like along for the ride the whole time. It was uh I don't know, it's exactly what I wanted,
Awesome. Yeah.
exactly what I
Yeah.
wanted. I'm just like on some level, I'm still blown away that it happens. Like oh yeah, I get sometimes when I do all the stuff right, I get exactly what I want, and it's still like I'm still in the phase where it's happened not a lot of times, so it's like exceedingly puzzling to have this feeling of like, oh, good, yeah, I have no way to pick apart that experience. It's the
Those are the
Italian.
moments that you gotta actually be like, hey, brain, neuroplasticize this,
Yeah,
motherfucker,
yeah,
like this
yeah,
one now. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Here's like, this is totally not integrated to your experience of your dad,
Yeah.
you, or anything that was going to happen. You got to process this, like, and you want to process it because it was good, and you're like, yeah, and you're just like, it's still like it's like almost a week later, and I'm still like, what the fuck was that?
Hey man, when dads come around, like that's life changing.
Dude, yeah, no, it's huge. It's no, that's the ultimate permission, right? Because
Yeah.
that's for some of us, that's like the lack that we felt we just didn't get. And it's not on their part. See, that's the other thing. It's like the lack we felt because they're not having our experience, and we don't know how to communicate our experience, so we don't even know what we need, so they're struggling. They're a blind man in the dark looking for a black cat that isn't there. It's like they're gonna fuck up. Like, we just have, as kids we can't know that, but as adults we can accept that and be like, these people were trying to do the best they could with their circumstances, even if they were like radically fucked up, right? Like, they're still doing the best they could with what they had, with what the set of circumstances they were handed. And that, I think that compassion can go all the way back as far as you want it to go, but that takes you to dark places, because then it's like, oh, I want to feel compassionate for Hitler right now. Like, let me do that math and
It's
be
not
like,
time for that yet.
yeah, no.
We've got other things to do.
Right, but that's
Dad, yeah.
the big keys. That's like can you feel compassionate for not only the worst person who ever lived, but can you conceptualize the worst person who could possibly live and then feel compassionate for them? Can you feel compassionate for Satan as such, like embodied as like this poor dude who's just at the bottom of his own pit, slapping away any help that would get him out of there?
I mean, again, perspective. I have compassion for an art school rejectee.
Hi.
I didn't get rejected. I didn't get rejected from art school. That's the difference between someone who got into politics and me, who's still looking for the meaning of life. Yeah.
Could have been any of us. That's the thing. Like, I made it into art school eventually.
I made it into art school.
Yeah.
It was just high school.
Yeah. Yeah, man. But that's been my sort of like struggle with just the sort of things that have been coming up for me lately. Like, you talked about like the devil earlier, and I wasn't sure how, like, what your experience of that was.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I've done that meditation where I sit and I talk to what I think Satan is, and try and feel love for that. Try and feel love for someone.
Not easy for you? Who's Satan? Oh man. Oh, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
I love all things. Well, also like Satan, Lucifer, Christ gets enmeshed in there too, right?
It's the same. I mean, for me, it's the same entity. Satan and Christ are the same thing. You can't have one without the other, and that's why, I think when Christ is going in the garden and he's talking to Satan. He's talking to himself. He's like, you know, the thing he's saying is like, are you sure you want to go through with this? Because this is gonna fucking suck. Like, I know it's gonna suck. I know how the story plays out. I know I get betrayed. Do you still love the world? Are you still willing to do it? Because it's gonna fucking blow. You're not ready. And he goes, yeah, let's do it. Let's do the thing. And
one of them was fearless.
yep. Yeah.
In the story. In
the story. Yeah. And so, but he's talking to himself. Right? And it's so key that he's alone. And because it shows you that in order to be okay, in order to accept that path where you're potentially, where it's not going to happen because you can't know, but where it potentially is going to go, where you could be the symbol for the next thing. If there's any hesitation in your mind, you're in trouble. If you're not willing to say fuck you when fuck you is necessary, you're in trouble. And sometimes you need that. Like my wife and I say, like she says, like there's no fuck you between us. And sometimes,
but there is no, probably, right?
There's a no. There's no. Yeah. And so, but sometimes when there's too much of a push, you need to have that in the back pocket. You need to have that Satan in the back pocket. You need to know how to wield it properly, you know, because if you don't, it'll take control and just wreck everything. You know,
I mean, in the Garden of Earthly Delight, Satan represents rational thinking and desire.
Yeah.
Scientific mind.
It's the same thing. It's illumination. Lucifer is illumination, because illumination is that which begins bifurcation. It's as soon as you have light and dark, you have two concepts that are opposed, and that begins the opposition, and that begins opposition as quality in the adversarial
process of opposition. I never actually connected the story in such a way that led me to just see Christ disenfranchise himself and come out of that purest spot with consciousness of self, right? Self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's the only change, right? Self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only change anybody ever undergoes, is like, are you more aware of yourself or less? It's like, that's all there is to be aware of, in some sense.
Yeah, it's just that most of our stories are about the denial, like, right? Like our ego creates it, and then we work towards, we mimic power all the way up. Yeah, no, it's very interesting too, because in that same story, who was once the brightest light was no longer the brightest light, and that change came through the self. Because even in
ego,
even in Mystery School Dropouts last week, we were talking about this story, and this is a nuance off of even what we were talking about last week, because it was still, God was still externalized, you know, all the moving parts of the story were still externalized. And integration. Integration. A whole new thing. On that note, though, like, if you ever need someone to like trial and error for your game, let me know. I'm so into it.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I mean, if it actually is helpful. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's getting to that point where I have to start doing it, because the concepts are now like, okay, is this accessible to other people?
Right. Yeah.
Now that's the challenge of like, now I've got the thing almost completely mapped out, like how it's supposed to work, and now I need to know if this is something that I can hand off or not. And so that's definitely the next stage. And so, yeah, I mean, you're on the Discord with on that thing. So that's usually there, so you can follow the game Ashes of the Magi.
I have to learn that platform, to tell you the truth. I find it very anti-intuitive as far as the platform goes, but
again, it's a facty, not a relady place until you make it one. But there are servers they're really good, but it's just showing up and like forging the connections, because otherwise they're not there.
Good to know that, though. So Ashes
of the Magi is the game. Google it. It's got .coms and whatnot. So I've been
Ashes
working on it
of
a long time. And it's, you know, it hasn't always been this. It's been a, you know,
I understand. This is
game
your
is a journey
mountain.
of my process.
Yeah.
You know, it's a journaling of my process and my working this out. So it's still coming around, but I'm happy about where it's going.
Yeah, no, I'm literally excited for the people who get to play this in the future.
Me too.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you have a lot of things to keep you busy, and you sounds like you have a busy day ahead of you as well.
A little bit.
So I will let you go for now.
Mhm.
Actually, I'll stop recording for a moment to
Yeah.
just hit you up with them.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This has been
You are
great.
fantastic. I hope to
You're
speak to you
fantastic.
soon. And